Greetings, my guzzlers. Here we are in one of what is probably going to be the hottest day in June since about 1970 something or other, and I've got to do some baking. And it's in the morning and it's still nice and warm. Ideal baking time, but never mind. I've got to do this because I need some bread for tomorrow. So we're going to start it today. Now this is another speciality bread, and by rights this isn't or can't be the actual bread that I'm making, because this is a bread specific to a region in Sicily, and this bread now has this PDO, the protected designation of origin, which basically means, you know, you can't make this bread and call it this bread and then sell it as this bread because I'm not in Sicily and I'm not in this particular area. So what we're going to make, and my pronunciation is probably going to be crap again, some Pagnotta del Dittaino. Dittaino is the region, the valley in Sicily that is famous for this bread, and that's what we're going to make. Now, if we were making a sourdough bread, we need a sourdough starter. So here's a sourdough starter, but we're not making a sourdough bread, but we're going to make like a yeast starter. This is known as a biga or biga, okay, and it's essentially a mixture of flour, water, and in this case some actual yeast. So the sourdough utilises natural yeast that's found in the flour and in the air and everything, but this we are actually going to use dried yeast, but we're not adding sugar, and we're not adding it just before we start knead and everything like that. What we're going to do is we start this off today, and about 24 hours time, i.e. tomorrow when I want to make the bread, we can then use this, hopefully, sort of more active starter culture. So what I've got here, and because of the nature of this bread, it needs to be made with the specific wheat, durum wheat, that comes from this valley, which this obviously doesn't, right? But I've got 140 grams of that flour there, and to it I'm going to add half a teaspoon of dried yeast. We're just going to mix that in, and then what I've got here is some water that's around about 27 now, okay, so some warm or tepid water, and I'm going to add 150 grams of water. Now what we're now going to do is make sure this is all mixed together, so all the flour is wet, and that's as far as we go today. We're not kneading any of this, we're just making sure that we've got all the flour hydrated, and then we're going to leave it in a warm place, and it's bloody warm here, okay, and like I say, we're just going to then leave that for 24 hours or so, i.e. about this time tomorrow morning, and hopefully during that time what we should have seen is it rise, okay, we should see some bubbling, and it will, well, you know, it will fall back at the end of that time. So that's as far as we go with this speciality bread today. All I'm going to do is I'm going to loosely cover that over some cling film and just put it to one side. So here we are, about 24 hours later. Now you may have noticed a different bowl to what I started with, very rapidly, because it is still very warm, and yesterday was exceptionally warm. within an hour it was threatening to come out of the bowl. So I had to transfer it to a different bowl. And although it has collapsed back now, it did rise considerably more. You can sort of see where it went to. And it's still all nice and bubbly now. So we're now ready to mix our dough. So what I've got in here is 400 grams of the wheat flour. Okay, and to that I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And then I've got here 170 mils of warm water, so just under 30, it's about 27 I think it is. So in that goes, and then of course our final thing is our biga, or however you meant to pronounce it. In that goes. So what we're now going to do is we're just going to mix all of that together until we've got it into a dough, and then we're going to turn it out and knead it. Now, still a good few hours before we're ready to bake this thing. We've got to do the initial sort of rise. We've got to do call it the proving. So no need to put your oven on yet. So I'm just going to get this all nicely mixed together. That's turned out onto a lightly floured surface. It's not overly sticky at the moment. It's getting stickier as I need it. And now, what time is it? We want to give it a kneading for at least 10 minutes. Okay, we want to stretch that gluten out. And then it's going to go back into that bowl. I might lightly oil that bowl. And then we'll cover it with some cling film. And the idea being we then leave it for about 2 hours. It's not quite as warm today, but essentially we want it to double in size. Okay, so it might do it sooner than 2 hours given the temperature. We'll have to wait and see. So I'm saying to you that this bread comes from this specific region of Sicily. It has to meet certain requirements. So for instance, it has to be between 500 grams and a kilo. I think it's 1005 grams in weight. It has to be a round shape, sort of flat round shape, as you'll see when we prove it, which is either served up, if you like, sold as the whole round or half a loaf. One of them rounds cut in half, not a half size loaf, although you can make it, because you can make it down to 500 grams. It's got a medium sort of, when they classify like the texture, medium sort of honeycomb texture to it, medium elasticity. It's got a crust of about 3 to 4 millimeters, which is the crumb inside is a soft yellow crumb. That's mainly because of obviously the wheat that comes from the valley. So, like I say, this is a special bread from a designated area, and really not much else to tell you. Apparently one of the favoured ways of eating it to fully appreciate the bread apparently is a bruschetta. It lends itself to cutting into slices that you can then use for bruschetta, and some people would argue you just simply have it like that with a drizzle of oil, slice of tomato, some oregano, and that's all you need. So like I say, I'm kneading this for 10 minutes, going to go into like the old bowl, and then we're going to leave it for two hours. So you can see here how about an hour and 20-25 minutes. This is more than doubled in size, because like I say, it is quite warm in here. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to knock it back. Now what I've done is we're going to be proving in a banneton, okay, and I've floured that, and now we're just going to knock the air out of this, and what we're going to do is essentially, because we want the air bubbles out, is we're going to be sort of folding it over into the centre. So you want to mind you haven't got too much flour on your surface, otherwise it's not going to stick really well. So we're essentially trying to make it into a ball and then flip it over, and what we're doing is we're sort of pushing it in underneath with the sides of our hands, and you'll notice that's creating like a nice firm skin over the top. And then we take our floured banneton and we pick that up and we try and plonk it in the centre. Now all we're going to do now is just going to cover this over, because we don't want this sort of skinning over. So I'm just going to use the linen that come with the banneton. The bannetons, you can use them like I have, directly onto the sort of the rattan, if you like, or you can do it in the linen. If you do it directly onto the cane surface, you'll get some nice spiral patterns. So now, once again, we're just going to put that to one side and allow that again to prove, this time for about an hour and a half. Again, we're looking for it to double in size. So when that's almost done, that's when we're going to want to put our oven on. We'll need a baking sheet and some baking paper, parchment paper, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and we will then be baking it in the oven at 200 degrees fan. You may also want some way of misting, depending on how you like your crust. So I'll catch you in an hour and a half. So this has had an hour, and I've looked at it already, and you can see that it's considerably risen in that time. So what we're going to do now is, I've got a baking sheet here with some baking paper on it, and we're just going to flip that out, and there you can see the nice floured surface of the banneton has left nice little ridges. Now I'm just going to give it a light misting, and then I just want to flour it over. It's probably been a bit heavy with that flour. And now I'm going to give it a cross on top. So I've got my lamb or lane, and we're going to go across that way and that way, and you can see already that's starting to open up. Now that's going in that oven at 200. Now, because I want, where's my time again? Because I want that to have quite a crusty crust, okay, normally, you know, we need some steam in there, which we haven't got at the moment in that oven, because we've got it just in the straightforward oven. So after 10 minutes, I'm going to very quickly mist over the top, okay, and then it's going to go back in, if you like. It's not really coming out, because we don't want it to sort of cool down anything. So it'll be a quick whip out, I'll spray it, and then go back in, and we'll give it another 30 minutes, or until the crust is done to our liking. The original is perhaps not like your typical really crunchy crust that you might see on a sourdough bread, but who cares? Okay, so we'll see how we get on for 10 minutes, but like I say, we need to work quick at that point. So that's had 10 minutes. Unfortunately, unless I move everything, you're not going to be able to see this. But like I say, I'm going to quickly open the oven, give it a quick spray over, and then shut that door, and then give it another 30 minutes, but I'll keep my eye on it towards the end. So we're almost there for time. It's had 35 minutes in total, and it certainly looks done. So there we go. Let me set your bugger. So I'm going to take it out of the oven. I'll turn that oven off. We're going to transfer it onto the rack, and then I'm going to cover it with a tea towel. You can see where all the flour, I don't know if you can see it on there, all the flour went everywhere. So you can see it's opened up slightly on there. Nice and hollow. It does split a little bit on the bottom, but that's fine. Okay, and like I say, just to soften that crust a little bit, what we're going to do is we're now just going to cover it over with a tea towel, and we're going to let it cool. And once that's cooled, we'll take a little slice and we'll see what it's like. Here it is, our Pagnotta del Dittaino. I'm not pronouncing it wrong. Still a little bit warm, and if this is sourdough, it's a good idea not to cut it when it's warm, because it tends to be a bit moist inside. But I'm doing for a taste while it's warm. So the crust is quite softish, okay. Nice looking crumb inside. So what's it sort of expected? It's not the sourdough with the big old holes in. Let's try a little bit. Well, actually, let's try it without butter first. So that bit is mainly crust, but that's nice. That takes me back. So when I was little, and it weren't that long ago, my nan used to make me nice thick slices of toast, butter on. Even though it wouldn't have been bread like this, but even so, so true Pagnotta from that region in Sicily. I'm not going to say the word again. Like I think I said earlier, part of its characteristics, its flavours and everything like that, meant to last for up to 5 days after it's baked. I'm not sure this is going to last that long. So, excellent stuff. Pagnotta del Dittaino.